long have you been in Amsterdam? And I know that you're a global citizen of sorts. We're going to talk more about that, but how and why did you move yourself to Amsterdam and how long are you there for before we talk about the story of Jose?
Yeah. Well, pleasure to be here. Great to see you.
Nice to see you.
Um, my wife Talia and I are artists in residence at the Conservatorium van Amsterdam, which is the second largest music conservatory in the world after Berkeley,
Wow.
in terms of the numbers, and it's the largest conservatory in Europe. So I'm working in the jazz department. She's working the jazz and pop departments, doing songwriting and music business, and I'm doing band leading and how to wear cool hats, basically.
Wow.
um, so
So
we've been here
this
since.
is a year round, this is like a school year gig, September to May,
Exactly.
something like that.
Yeah, that we're working this semester, and then just part time, and then we will come back in the fall, and it's very progressive. They wanted us to come in and kind of shake it up, bring like a different outsider perspective, which is unusual and pretty cool. And it took about 10 months of work on our end and their end to get the visas and the program and the money, but we figured it out and we've been here since mid January. Yeah. So
Is
we're
this the first,
still,
is this the first time you've ever spent extended time in Amsterdam?
yes. Yeah. I have lived in London before. Very different. Uh, very different.
In a nutshell, what's the difference between Amsterdam and London?
Well, it's I think the humor, like British people, a lot of our humor comes from them in a lot of ways, right? Like like The Office, or you know what I mean? Like we're like Monty Python,
Hmm.
like we're very linked in our cultures, even though there are
Sure.
huge differences. It's very similar. Obviously, we both speak English as our native language. Here, the Dutch speak perfect English, but we don't share the same sense of humor. So, my wife Tally and I are like, we're New Yorkers, so we're always trying to have a little chat in the store, and usually it doesn't land well.
Doesn't ignite.
Exactly. But the love for culture and music is huge here.
Hmm.
The venues are great. The musicians are incredible. The school is amazing and world class. So, we've really been welcomed with open arms, and it's been
And
incredible.
and what has it been like during the pandemic, as far as making music has been obviously a very challenged activity all over. So I'm curious, what have there been have there been live any kind of live experiences in small venues or larger, or just what's going on with that? I'm just so interested to know.
Yeah, well, they're in a complete lockdown. Um, so everything is closed except for like the grocery store and a bank, pretty much. So that's been a little challenging. It took me about a month and a half to find an amp, for example, for my house. But
Right.
interestingly, they are doing some streaming concerts. So Tali and I were lucky enough to be invited to perform for Valentine's Day at the Royal Concertgebouw, which is like the biggest
Sure.
venue in the city. It's about 3 miles from us, down the street, and we played a duo show, and that was just absolutely stunning. So, it's weird. Like I miss my band a lot, and I can't even bring over my musicians from London.
Right.
I was hoping to bring them over for a live stream session, and no one can travel here right now, even from like Brussels or Paris. It's all completely locked down, so it's a weird feeling. And this is actually great, like streaming conversations, streaming concerts, because it's a way to stay connected to people.
Sure. Well, let's go back and I've been reading some stuff about you that I didn't know, and I want to ask you some questions and some.
Uh
First, no, it's
oh.
okay. You know all this very well. The first thing
Maybe.
is that well, I'm sure you know this, is that your roots, I guess this means your parents, I read, are Angolan and Panamanian.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's what it says right there in your bio. And
Yeah.
so I've known things about you, but I've always considered you early on. And when we get to talk about your new record, you're definitely a global citizen, but I didn't actually know this story. So where did an Angolan and a Panamanian hook up and meet and live, and then you became the part of that family? I don't know if you have brothers and sisters, but I'm so interested to hear. I know you, Minneapolis, South Minneapolis is kind of where you, is that where you were born or just where you grew up? Or you have to
That's
tell us.
where that's where I was born. I was a home birth too, a real 70s kind of situation. You know, my mom's like a super like hippie feminist, like do it yourself. So she had me at home. She was like, I'm gonna have a natural birth. So it's even weirder because my mom's Irish American and my dad is Panamanian and Angolan. And I didn't know the Angolan part until last year when I did my African ancestry test, which
Wow.
is kind of made famous by Henry Louis Gates. He took the test, right?
Right.
So yeah, I took this test because on my mom's side, we're like 11th generation Irish immigrants, and it's very well traced and
Gotcha.
documented from, you know, County Mayo to New York to farms
Wow.
in Minnesota and the whole thing. On my dad's side, he was born in Panama. His grandparents emigrated. I think his grandparents emigrated from the Caribbean to work on the Panama Canal because that's where all the work was.
Right.
Um, and then before that, it was just a question mark. I had no idea. So I took this African ancestry test and I got 100% match with the Mbundu tribe in Angola, which is fascinating. So I've been
Wow.
kind of deep diving into their music and culture, and they speak Portuguese there.
Right. In
So it's a
Angola.
really,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's kind of a weird thing. And I had when I found out we were living on the Lower East Side, and we have a great friend who's a fashion designer, um, and from Nigeria. And I told him the news, and he said, "Oh man, Angola." He said, "They're crazy, man. That makes sense."
Yeah. Well, um, let's jump into you've had such an interesting musical career, and you're a person, a musician who it seems to me has what you've lived is not being in a box. Uh, you have an identification with jazz that started relatively early in your career, but by the same token, you obviously very early on started embracing other things with R&B and soul, and then of course what happened with the whole Bill Withers "Lean on Me"
Right.
project, which was so fantastic, and which, by the way, you did here in Aspen a couple of years ago. It was so brilliant. But I look
That was
at
a
you as,
great night.
yeah, it was fun. It worked. But I look at you as a real kind of global citizen. And then I know that you had a stint in Brooklyn, I think at a certain point. You identify as a New Yorker, as you said. So how do you put all this together? And then we'll jump into, maybe that's just the way to lead into talking about how those roots led you to this cool new project that you have, No Beginning, No End #2, which is a sequel to your Blue Note debut. So tell us, you know, how does this all blend together for you?
Well, yeah, great question. You know, born in 78, so my first musical memories were really Michael Jackson, um, and Prince, you know, and being from Minneapolis, he was a huge Purple Rain, huge album. And so I think I was very kind of confident and comfortable with like these Black creators embracing a lot of stuff. I was lucky enough to see Michael Jackson on the Bad Tour when I
Yeah,
think I was 8 years old. Mind blowing. I can
must
still
have been.
remember it.
Yeah.
And you know, he's playing like Dirty Diana and he's playing Come Together, you know, and I didn't even know who the Beatles were. I was 8, you know, but I was like, this song is awesome. You know,
Mm.
so I'm watching him. I remember his guitarist was like this white lady with like dreads and she's like shredding, you know, and I was like, and he's super cool and like R&B and pop. And so I think, and you know, of course, Prince did everything. So I think that those were my first two huge influences. And then when hip hop came in, I really fell in love with that. Is that, it's the music of my generation. And crucially, the producers of early 90s hip hop, like Ali Shaheed Muhammad with A Tribe Called Quest and Prince Paul for De La Soul, people like that, they were sampling jazz records and soul records. They were sampling Roy Ayers. They were sampling, classic Blue Note stuff. So I had no idea what the samples were, but I was getting this jazz education through hip hop. And then I started reading the liner notes and saying, okay, the sample was cleared by Roy Ayers. And I was like, well, what's a sample?
Right.
I'm like 12, I'm like 13. Well, who's Roy Ayers?
And who's
So
Roy Ayers?
yeah. So I went to the record store, the Electric Fetus, which is in South Minneapolis, Prince's favorite record store. And I would say, hey, and they were so nice. I was like, hey, who's Roy Ayers? Who's Miles Davis? And they're like, oh yeah, man, go to the jazz section, go to the soul section. And then I discovered, I remember the first time I looked for a Miles Davis record and there were like 60, and I was like, which one do I start with? And I pulled out one and it had like 2 tracks on it. And each track was like 30 minutes long. And I was like, whoa, like what? Because, I was used to, 15, 16 tracks and they're like 3 minutes long, pop records or whatever. So that's when my education started. So I really was discovering jazz, hip hop, and rock. There was Green Day, there was Nirvana, there was, 9 Inch Nails, Pearl Jam, all happening at the same time. And for me, I was just like loving it, all of it. So it makes sense in my brain. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it makes sense outside of my brain.
Well, no, it does. And you were describing, I read that you described this new recording as hooky and funky with jazz running through it, mixed with a little New York hip hop element, which sounds like yeah, that right through. And you said Roy Ayers, and it's so interesting because he played an early Jazz Aspen festival. I remember vividly. I remember he wore these glasses that were these round, super round, very psychedelic. He was just a real trippy guy, and very talented vibes, and just band was great. And so I could see how that would have slipped into the mix with you. And then in this new recording, I was so interested to hear about all the different guests that you had and the different styles. I haven't heard it yet, but after reading about it, I'm ready. And a couple of them I noticed are people that we've had. Liz Wright, the vocalist, Let Us See, the vocalist. The other ones I recognize their names, but it sounds like that you have so many different things. A little funk, some soft rock, some disco, some Afro-Latin, percussion, folk, soul.
And wow. Bebop, even there's even a
too?
bebop track. Yeah.
Killers. And you described it as trying to connect the dots on a global level. No beginning, no end, no boundaries. So that's a very, very, for this world, the world that we are living in, this crazy, mad world, that's a very, I think, progressive and interesting way to look at it. And just talk about how all that comes together in this new album that you've done, No Beginning, No End, #2.
Yeah, it's in a way, it's a return to my sound that I started at Blue Note, which you mentioned, No Beginning, No End 1. So I was working with Brian Bender in Brooklyn, and then with Don Was at Blue Note, and we put together this sound that was very, neo soul influenced, but like post neo soul, like Robert Glasper, Pino Palladino, Chris Dave, Takuya Kuroda trumpeter from Japan. So it already had this kind of like connecting genres in it. And then I met Emily King, so she brought in a singer-songwriter, New York energy to it. So I wanted to kind of expand on that. And it's really global because, I've toured so much since then. That came out in 2013. And I've made these friends all around the world. So we have Aloe Black, I met in LA, who's also Panamanian, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Eric Truffaz, who is one of my favorite trumpeters in the world. He's the most famous French trumpeter. I think of him as like the kind of like a white Miles Davis, you know, in
Oh,
his vibe and his.
that's a compliment.
Yeah, yeah, he's
Mhm.
incredible. Hindi Zara, who is a French Moroccan singer who I adore. She was on Blue Note France, and I met her in London. Um, and then, you know, like the people you mentioned, Liz Wright, Lettucey, Christian Scott, Atunde Ajua, and, you know, just a who's who of the New York jazz scene. Ben Williams on bass, um, Justin Brown on drums, Jamire Williams. He's now in LA, but on drums as well.
And
Just
what
like
did you record this in LA and New York? Is that where it was recorded? Or
exactly. Well, we recorded the band in LA, and we had an LA band and a New York band, which I
uh-huh.
thought was kind of cool because
Sure.
that's where everyone is now. And
Mhm.
then the guests we recorded in different studios. So I think we ended up recording in 4 different countries, and 7 different studios, all when it was all said and done.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, it's really just my favorite people. You know, Tali, my wife Tali, wrote half of it, and she's on a beautiful song called "I Found a Love" as a duet. And it's Jay Horde, who is like I don't know if you know him, but he's in Brooklyn. He's like an incredible singer. So it's some very well known people, but I also wanted to introduce um, people like, you know, Jay Horde, who you may not know, but is like in New York. He's like everyone's favorite singer, you know.
Well, no,
And
hold on. You just said something. You said two things that my ears perked up. New York's
okay,
favorite singer,
yeah,
everyone's favorite. I've known who is this person? Excuse me while I get my pen out because if you said that there's some people agree that who is this?
he goes by J. Horde, Hoard. His name's Jonathan Horde, but we just call him Jay Horde. And he actually sang at our wedding. I was a huge fan. Me and Tali were both huge fans. And you know, a good friend of ours put together like a killing New York band for our wedding.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, the singer's got to be great. And he was like, well, maybe my friend Jay Horde could do it. And we're like, Jay Horde, we love Jay Horde. And so he came and sang, and he was amazing. And we became like best friends. And he's on the album. I mean, he's incredible.
What is what's his bag? Is he mixed like you or is he more any particular
He's
is he in one group
he's
or
mixed like gospel, funk, jazz, blues, soul, and you know,
sounds like our kind of guy.
he's amazing.
Wow.
Cecily, I should shout out Cecily, who's on the album from Philly.
Yeah.
Um, she's amazing. I mean, it's basically just you know, it's us having fun with the who's who of like the LA and New York scene. And
Hmm.
I wanted it to be, you know, some of it is serious. There's some songs in there that are like very personal and very meaningful to me. I think it's my most personal album as a songwriter. And there's
Hmm.
some songs that are just super fun. You know,
Yeah.
like there's a song called You Know What to Do that sounds like an Andre 3000 Hey Ya kind of like party song. Um, there's some
So
disco on there, you know what I mean?
so let me ask you something. Have you I'm assuming since the album is recent, that you haven't exactly toured behind it yet because touring is not happening. But when it does, which hopefully is
Yeah.
going to be this summer, really is what it sounds like. We're hopeful with fingers and toes crossed. But whenever it's coming back, only question is when. So
Mm,
my question for you is, if someone called you and said, "Hey, Jose, we're great news. Our festival in such and such is happening in November, and the weather will be very nice, and
mm.
the pandemic, it's okay, it's behind us, and we'd like you to come and bring a band." And what program would you propose? So would you, like, for example, would you say try to get some of these guests, some of these people, and do really the show that was really the new record, or would you mix in some of the Lean on Me, Bill Withers stuff, or just maybe something like or across the board, a little bit of this and go back to, I don't know. I'm just curious if this is something, it's a very personal recording. I hear
Yeah.
that. But recording is not always performing live. For
Mm.
some people it is, and for some it's not. So I'm curious, is this something that you feel like you would tour if you know if we wiped if the slate was clean tomorrow and there was no pandemic, would you take this band if you could, all things being equal?
Absolutely. I mean, the touring band that so we got to play one show
Yeah.
in Japan for Valentine's Day a year ago.
Yeah.
And then everything was wiped out. I mean, the touring band I have right now, the US touring band, is Big Yuki on keys, Marcus Machado on guitar, Jarris Yoakley, who's my newest discovery. I think he's the complete future of drumming. I will say it right now. He's
Jarris, spell his last name. Yoakley?
Yokley. Yeah. Yoakley.
Jarris. Okay, go ahead.
He is he's the best drummer I've ever worked with. And I've worked with a lot of great drummers. I'm gonna say that right now. And Ben Williams on bass. And so that band is incredible. Yeah, I mean, I think live, there are some standards in my repertoire now. Like, I'm never gonna stop singing just the two of us. I'm never gonna stop singing Lean on Me or Use Me, because they just, and I do feel a responsibility culturally a bit for Bill Withers' musical legacy. Like, he passed away obviously very recently, and I was really happy that he had a chance to listen to the project and hear it and talk about it with me. And
that's
and
cool. What did he
yeah,
have?
yeah.
I'd love to know what did he have to say. I'd love to hear what
He said it was cool, man. I mean, he's so he was so generous. I mean, I was terrified to meet him, absolutely terrified. And he wasn't easy on me, but he also was extremely generous. And he said, yeah, man, like, you're a great singer. Like, do whatever you want with my songs. He gave me that permission, and which I needed, because he's such a looming figure. And I think he really, I got to do some incredible shows with his daughter, Corey, like at the Hollywood Bowl.
Wow.
And his wife was there for her birthday. And, really, I think I realized it means something more to them, because, a song like Grandma's Hands is about his grandmother. It's about Corey's great grandmother. So meeting them really brought it to another level. So I do feel a sense of responsibility to honor that in my catalog. And then, some songs of mine, people just want to hear, like Trouble, like fun, funky things. So I would do a mix. We'll do a mix of things, and probably a very, very long concert, because I feel like everyone's going to get out and play like 2-hour shows when they come back,
I'm sure. Boy, I'm looking forward to hearing this. And tell me, Tali, your partner, is a singer-songwriter? Is that what I'm understanding? And I know she's involved with your record company also.
Yeah, she's a co-founder, co-owner. I mean, she really runs it. If I'm being honest, she's the heart and soul and vision behind every good thing we do. And yeah, she's an incredibly accomplished songwriter. She's written, or co-written pretty much all of my best material.
Wow.
I think we've done 3 albums together now at this point. And, she performs as Tali, Taali. We're working on her next solo project over here.
And what is she? Does she sing? Does she play?
She sings, she plays, she produces, she writes.
What instrument does she play?
She plays keys, so piano, keyboards. I mean, I'm spoiled, because she's an incredible lyricist as well. So it's just like, I get to hear beautiful music in our home all the time, and if I'm like, hey, I need help with this, she's like, yeah, it's done, and she just writes it. I'm much slower than she is. She's like super fast. It takes me like, I don't know, I've been working on some of my songs for like 2 years. And we recently went through some of her voice notes looking through for her new album, and we had to stop at like 100 songs. I was like, okay, I need to stop. I'm overwhelmed. There are too many ideas.
Does she travel with you when you go on tour, or is it that depends?
She travels with me. I travel with her.
When you came to Aspen last time in June 2 years ago, was she here? Do you remember?
She didn't come to Aspen.
Oh
I
man,
wish she had. I mean,
that was a mistake.
I know. I'm regretting so many things now.
So you'll get an. It's all right. You'll be back. Don't worry. You'll
Exactly.
get another. You'll next time though. Bring her to Aspen. It would be a good thing. I read something else that you wrote, and I know you touched it a little bit, but I feel like we're because I'm a little bit older than you. But the music that you talk about that sort of runs through this project a lot, you referred to the 70s, and of course you were born, as you mentioned, in the 70s, but you described it as being this remarkably creative and eclectic moment, which I thought was a beautiful description. I assume you're meaning about the music that was going on. So
Yes.
if you had to, it's not just the society, but if you had to tick off, the five artists that really came up and just that mean the 70s to you, who would you, that were just the most influential, the ones that say, well, if you really wanted to just know what the 70s were really about, I'm talking about blank, 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 and blank. Who would those artists be?
Wow, that's tough. I mean, I don't know if I could name my defining for all the 70s, but for this project, I mean, wow, like Billy Joel, huge, I mean, I adore him as a songwriter, and like obviously he hit a lot of songwriters hit a huge. I mean, I think songwriting in the 70s is like very underrated. You have Stevie Wonder, you have Elton John, Joni, like you have just incredibly gifted people who took the kind of like songwriting artist as songwriters stance of the 60s and really brought it into a whole nother place. Of course, you have like funk, which is just exploding.
Wasn't Sly and the Stone, isn't that kind of about when they were
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the whole thing that's fascinating about the late 70s in particular, right, is that you had some things that were like dying out. Like jazz was in a weird like funk hybrid place. You had all this like Freddie Hubbard and like CTI. You had Herbie Hancock.
Right.
They were like doing like more headhunters, exactly, and Mwandishi, and everyone was changing their names to Swahili names, and it was like this cool like funk jazz soulful hybrid, which I love. And then you had like punk music starting to explode in Europe, right? And then you had this like weird German minimalist electronic like Kraftwerk, like early starting to like creep in, and this minimalist, Brian Eno kind of thing happening. Then you had reggae, right? Like Kaya was like the big hit of 78. And then of course you had disco, right? So you had like, Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, 78 just dominated everything. And it's great, ABBA and all that stuff is like I love it. So to me, it's really cool because like, even if you listen to like James Taylor or something, like the musicianship, like the studio musicians, you had all these jazz guys who said, I don't want to play the clubs anymore. I'm going to go make all this money in LA and I'm going to clean up. So they're just playing on like a who's who of sessions, and you start looking, you're like, oh, he played on that. He played on that. That's what's cool, because even though it wasn't, I think, talked about that much as a musician, you realize like you had all these cool like mixes of like jazz musicians working with these like new singer songwriters, and creating these incredible new sonic landscapes that had never been done before. And I think it's pretty special, you know.
You know, just all the names that you're just mentioning. What an incredibly fertile time of, you know, just and interesting. Every artist you mentioned, they're all American, and so much of the music that popular music that came from America, whether it was jazz or soul or rock or funk or R&B, really became, you know, so global. The music itself, so global, and really, you know, I maybe our greatest cultural export, you know, the body of music that we've given, the US has created broadly, you know, from, you know, and all these people from all these places, and you look at no place in the world could have produced what came out of this complicated country. And
Absolutely.
name all those names, and I wonder, I'm just sitting here now, we're looking the 70s, that's kind of like 50 years ago. And I'm sitting here trying to imagine 50 years from now, and there's two people like me and you talking to each other, and I wonder, but I don't know that I have confidence necessarily that this era is going to produce the same quality and diversity of artists who had careers. I mean, the people that you named are so iconic. They're almost one name artists, you know.
True. Yeah.
Joni, Elton,
ABBA.
but, you know, right. Prince. There's a lot of
Yeah.
them. James Taylor. It goes on. It's along the Beatles. You know, there's so many of them. It will be interesting. We can't. One of my great fantasies in life that I will never live is time travel. And if I would love to, if I could just go ahead 50 years and see it, and then come back, and I promise, and then I wouldn't remember what I saw, but just so that I'd love to go. And just, I am so very curious about music, and I'm very curious to see what happens post-pandemic. I'm one of the people who thinks it will be a roaring 20s kind of period that's coming. I know that in all of our lifetimes, none of us until the last year ever contemplated forced separation from other human beings. It's completely like that would be something akin to slavery, or being nothing that you would ever imagine we would experience.
Totally.
And the changes, you know, I mean, I'm hearing from people about a lot of hunger, you know, and missing the connection, missing what the way music, the special way that music brings people together. And you are definitely someone who I think as a younger artist has done a great job of carrying a torch of embracing a different kinds of music, styles of music, focusing on a message, I think, that's on the whole uplifting. And I think, you know, I'm just one person. I'm not here to judge anybody's what they do, but I do think that your message resonates, and it's been resonating. And I think the music that you are in sync with, and the people and musicians that you've surrounded yourself with, and you're likely to keep doing, I think that you're going to survive and thrive in the coming years doing what you do. And I'm happy that we've had a chance to know you. And it's one of the nice things. I've been doing this forever at Jazz Aspen, 30 years. And I've had
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's nice. Thank you. I've had the pleasure of you know, knowing people for a long time and watching their careers evolve and seeing them come back to, you know, like just over a period of 30 years. It's been some artists that have been coming that long. And so I know we're going to have a relationship like that with you. I hope I'm around for 30 more years. I don't know. I'll do my best. But
for longer than 30.
All right. Well, we'll see. Well, listen, I'm getting that tap on the clock that we're wrapping up right now, the listen up part of this interview, which has been great. So for those of you out there who've enjoyed Jose James, make sure you write down no beginning, no end, and the number 2 That is his new album, and is it? They can find it through your record company. It's out there now, right? It's available.
It's on all platforms. Rainbow
All
Blonde
right,
Records. Yes,
you'll
sir.
find it. Rainbow Blonde Records. No beginning, no end. Number 2. So that's great. Thank you very much. And for those of you who are joining us for the Artist Happy Hour, stay on the line. And for the rest of you, we will see you next time. There's more of these coming up. Check the JAS website. We've got a Nat Cohen next month, the amazing Israeli clarinetist and
Oh
saxophone,
yeah,
and
amazing.
a lot more people coming. So thanks very much. You all stay on the line if you're doing Artist Happy Hour. And thanks for those of you who joined us for listening up, and see you next time. Hang on for just a minute. We'll be right with you.
Beautiful. Thanks, man.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, you're gonna dig it. You're gonna dig it. The album, I mean.
Oh, one of your big fans is there. Oh man, look at that.
What's up?
These guys, listen.
Hey, how's it going?
Your Aspen
Good.
group. Here, I'd like you to, Jose, I'd like you to meet one of your Aspen grown groupies. His name is Mark. See him right there. He is such a huge Jose James fan, like to the point of absurdity. In a good way, right?
That's awesome.